Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining. This is our webinar for the Touring Engine. We're going to get started here with Stephen Roth, who's our president of JCA Arts Marketing.
Thank you, Jamie, and welcome IPM members to today's webinar. I'm Stephen Roth, president of JCA Arts Marketing, and I'll be joined today by my colleagues, Steve Jacobson, CEO of Jacobson Consulting Applications, and Kirk Mortensen, our Senior Product Manager. I'm going to take you through an overview of the Touring Engine. Kirk will give you a live demo of the Touring Engine, and I'll be joining him for some color commentary. Then Steve will provide some additional information on the product, and then we'll open it up for questions. JCA is skilled in CRM technology, and our work is data-driven. We are system agnostic and familiar with a number of different ticketing systems. JCA is proud to be celebrating its 30th year in consulting to nonprofits. We're dedicated to helping nonprofits work smarter. JCA has experience in building data warehouses that collect and standardize data from multiple ticketing systems. We've built a platform in the UK that is used by over 250 arts organizations running 8 different ticketing systems. That's the same platform that is the backbone of the Touring Engine. JCA Arts Marketing is the strategic consulting division of JCA. We are honored to count a number of IPN members as our client. In talking with senior staff from the Tennessee Performing Arts Center in Nashville, the Bushnell Performing Arts Center in Hartford, and the Blumenthal Center for the Performing Arts in Charlotte, we heard a common theme about touring Broadway seasons. All 3 venues were looking for better ways to forecast sales of future shows, increase revenue opportunities, and better manage their costs. They told us that they have a lot of great data locked up in each of their ticketing systems and said, wouldn't it be great if they could share that data to determine how they could expect a show to sell based on how it's done in other comparable markets? And not just summary sales information from a settlement report. They wanted to see week-by-week sales numbers for specific shows broken out by subscribers, subscriber add-ons, and single ticket buyers. We found that to be really interesting and asked them to give us more context. Here's a scenario they gave us. An IPN organization is midway through its Broadway season and budgets are tight. They're really counting on the next 2 shows to do well. So they call a meeting with marketing, programming, box office, and finance. Sound familiar? The meeting starts with questions about advanced sales and the forecast for those 2 important shows. A typical answer might be, advanced sales are slow, but we think that sales should take off soon. Then the concern sets in. What's that optimism based on? Do you know how the show did in its last few markets that it's played in? Did sales start out slow and then accelerate? How many times has that show been in those markets? Do those markets have a larger or smaller subscription base than us? Unfortunately, these questions are too often met with a shrug of the shoulders and some non-committal answers because, at best, the only available information may come from a last-minute phone call to appear in another market and maybe a spreadsheet, which you may not understand. We heard that instead of some best guessing, how great it would be if IPN organizations could just pull up a dashboard with all of the relevant sales data so they could really determine without any hassles whether they could expect sales to pick up or if they should start thinking about discounts or other options to move some tickets. So we built the Touring Engine. We worked with the Blumenthal, Bushnell, and TPAC to build a pilot. Our intent was to prove that this could be done and show the kinds of things that would be possible once organizations started sharing their Broadway ticketing data. The pilot has been successful, and we're ready to share Touring Engine with you and your organization. Touring Engine collects and delivers standardized data automatically in near real time and provides easy-to-understand charts and tables. Touring Engine allows you to compare productions from similar markets and within your own market, enhance forecasts, and access a depth and scope of information that you've never had before. The Touring Engine is a game changer. You have more, richer, and timelier data from more sources, which will allow you to make more insightful, data-driven, and impactful decisions that will increase your bottom line. Thank you, and now I'm going to pass to Kirk to give us a demo of the Touring Engine. Kirk?
Thank you very much, Stephen. I'm Kirk Mortensen. I'm a Senior Product Manager at JCA, and I'm excited to show you Touring Engine. I hope that as we go through this, you'll see how it can make your life easier and add a lot of value to your planning efforts around Broadway touring productions. I also hope that you'll see the potential that exists with this application once we get beyond the pilot stage. As I show you the Touring Engine, let's imagine that we are all from the mythical JCA Performing Arts Center. We're doing exactly what Stephen just described, trying to get a sense of how well our remaining shows in this season will do by looking at those same shows in other markets and similar shows from the past in our market. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into Touring Engine. We're doing a live demo here, so everybody wish me luck. All right. This is Touring Engine, ladies and gentlemen. I'm showing you my web browser. I've already navigated to the URL for the Touring Engine, and I've already logged in. It's a simple matter of an email address and a password. When I log in, I see a folder over here that contains all of the dashboards that are part of Touring Engine. In the pilot, we've got 6 dashboards. In the future, we're hoping to add more. We're looking here at a sales curve dashboard. This is data for multiple productions from our 3 different pilot organizations, the Bushnell, the Blumenthal, and the Tennessee Performing Arts Center, also known as TPAC. Each of them are using a different ticketing system, ProVenue, Audience View, and Tessitura respectively. We extracted the data automatically into the Touring Engine, and it's live, it's updating regularly. And this is maybe the most exciting thing to me about the Touring Engine. We've got data from 3 different organizations using 3 completely different ticketing systems, all collected automatically so that we can present it to you in a dashboard like this. So as we go through this demo, I want to talk you through a few scenarios. For our first scenario, Matilda is on sale now at the mythical JCA pack, and I'm trying to understand where our sales are going to end up compared to our attendance targets. I've already filtered the dashboard to look at runs of Matilda the musical. So let me orient you a little bit on how this particular sales curve works. Our measure here on the y-axis is percentage of inventory sold. That means of all of the seats that are available in each local run of a production, how many of those seats have been sold as a percentage. Each line that we're looking at represents a different local run of a production at Hartford and Charlotte and Nashville, respectively. And in this chart, along the x-axis, 0 here on the bottom right side represents the week of the first performance in the given production run. And then we go backwards from there by weeks prior to that 0 week. So the lines are all relative to that 0 week, which could be, depending on the local production run, in different months or in different years for each line. Okay, so the Bushnell, here in blue, the Bushnell Center's Matilda started their subs load-in about 67 weeks prior to the show. And then sales started to pick up around 28 weeks prior, with a spike in the final week and selling in the end about 70% of their seats. The Blumenthal here in green started selling at 47 weeks prior with a strong initial subscription demand, and then leveling off a bit around 33 weeks prior, then steepening gradually toward the end, a little bit of a bump there at the end to nearly sell out. TPAC in orange started selling about 41 weeks prior. There was another big initial subscription bump, leveling off between 36 and 13 weeks. And then there's this really significant spike in sales from about 12 weeks prior all the way through to that 0 week, also nearly selling out. Okay, so let me pause for a minute and give you a chance to digest how this chart works and see if you notice anything it tells you about what to expect at JCA PAC. Stephen, what does this chart tell you about how sales for our JCA PAC run of Matilda might end up?
Here's what I'm seeing, Kirk. Sales at all 3 comparator markets picked up around 30 weeks prior to the first performance. So we might expect the same sales pattern at JCA PAC. All three competitor markets saw an uptick close to the first performance, so we might anticipate one as well. Now, two of the markets, Blumenthal and TPAC, pretty much sold out, but Bushnell did not. I want to look at other comparator shows from these markets before I project my expected capacity. Does JCA PAC perform more like Blumenthal and TPAC or more like Bushnell?
That's great, Stephen. Thank you. The data is talking to us already, and not surprisingly, we're identifying more questions we want to investigate. So let's dig in a little deeper with our next scenario. For scenario number 2, Something Rotten hasn't gone on sale yet for single tickets at JCA PAC. So I'm trying to forecast what our single ticket sales will look like. I can filter on a number of different fields here to find the specific production runs that I want to look at. So I'm going to go to title here, and I'm going to change this to Something Rotten. Oh, if I could spell correctly, that might help. Excellent. Change this to Something Rotten. And now we're looking at the Something Rotten local production runs. There are other filters available, like the touring production name, the market, the organization. Start date is interesting. You can filter by year or quarter, month, or day if you want to get more specific about the times of year that you're interested in pursuing. We have this other filter, nth time through market, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And I also want to point out down here this focus tool, which allows you to focus on specific parts of the sales curve. I'm going to go ahead and expand it so we can see the entire curve all at once. So again, here we're looking at 3 different local production runs of Something Rotten at our 3 different venues. And as I look at this chart, it's clear that here in blue, Charlotte did amazing. So kudos to the Blumenthal team. I see, though, as I look more closely, that Charlotte has a really huge bump right here at the beginning of their sales cycle. And I'm wondering if that is due to subscriptions. Now, so far, I've been showing you sales curves, and at this point, I want to show you another kind of chart. I could go over here and navigate to the other dashboards using my navigation pane, but I have another option as well. I can hover over any of the data points in this chart, right-click, and I get a Jump To option in my right-click menu, which allows me to jump to a number of other dashboards available in Touring Engine. Right now, I'm going to navigate to Unsold, Sold by Price Type. So the great thing about jumping to another dashboard is that it will keep all of my existing filters. So now I'm looking at this column chart dashboard, but I'm still filtered to my Something Rotten production runs. The chart that we're looking at here shows a column for each local run of a production and then breaks the count of ticket sales for those productions into different categorizations of their price types. So in blue, we have fixed and flex subscriptions. In purple, we have our subscription add-on tickets. In green, we have our single tickets and our group tickets. In gray, we have our comp tickets. And then we represent all of the unsold tickets in light gray so that the top of the column represents the total size of the house. And I should note that the counts here are averages across all the performances in the local run. So we're seeing each run's average ticket sales per performance. Let me give you just a moment to get comfortable with this chart and what it can tell you. Okay, here's what I see. We can clearly see that as we suspected, Charlotte has a strong subscription base. It's 83% of their inventory, compared to about 30% in Nashville and Hartford. So 80% there, about 30% in Nashville and Hartford. And that seems to have made a big difference in the final outcome, even though Charlotte sold significantly fewer single tickets. Charlotte ended up selling about 90% of their tickets. However, we have to note that each of these organizations have different house sizes, so we have to consider how large the JCA PAC house is in comparison. Stephen, what conclusions would you draw from this chart?
Well, we know that JCA PAC is less like Charlotte and more like Nashville and Hartford. And we don't have subscription rates like we're seeing in Charlotte. So let's focus on single tickets. From the data, we can expect that we're going to sell somewhere on an average of 550 single tickets per performance, and we'll budget accordingly.
That's excellent, Stephen. So that gives us some clear direction as we forecast for Something Rotten. All right, I'm going to navigate back to our sales curve here. Now, just like Stephen said a moment ago, given that JCA PAC doesn't have as strong a subscription base as Charlotte, and given that Hartford and Nashville are coming out so close in terms of capacity sold here at the end, I'm going to want to use Hartford and Nashville as my comparators for projecting our upcoming production of Something Rotten. So right away, I'm going to go over here to my market filter and just get rid of Charlotte so I can focus on just the two curves that I'm using as my comparator markets for this production. Stephen, what else might we want to look at now?
If we had JCA PAC's data in the Touring engine, we could also do other comparator shows from our own market, shows from the past that might behave similarly to Something Rotten, perhaps Gentleman's Guide from last season. And given what we see here, our projected sales curve coming up might show us topping out somewhere between 50 to 60% capacity sold, and we should budget accordingly.
Excellent. So another thing that occurred to me is I might be interested in looking at these curves from a different perspective. Right now, what we're measuring is percentage of total inventory sold, but that's not the only measure that we have access to. If we go into full screen mode for this chart, I have access to a number of other values or measures that I can use to represent the data from these local production runs. Now watch closely as I switch to using these different measures, what happens to the lines. If I switch to using percent gross potential, interestingly, they get closer together. They kind of collapse a little bit. When I switch to using tickets sold, there's a little bit of an expansion here towards the middle end of the sales cycle, but then they get close again at the very end. But what's really interesting is when I switch to using total revenue. Look at how that orange line from the Bushnell Center just completely overtakes the green line from the Nashville. What it looks like to me is that Bushnell was selling at higher prices than Nashville, but that didn't significantly depress demand. Stephen, what does that tell you?
It looks like these shows had a pretty good uptick in sales in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So for JCA PAC, I might consider incorporating that uptick into my projections.
Yeah, it sounds like we'll have an opportunity to really apply learnings from those comparator markets. Okay, next, let's imagine that Hamilton is coming to the mythical JCA PAC next season. Now, there are lots of scenarios we could cover around Hamilton, right? But for this one, let's say we're trying to get a sense of how Hamilton would impact subscription behavior and subscriber behavior based on other organizations that have it on their season. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this and navigate to another dashboard, Organization Season Metrics. This dashboard is a table with a row for each season at each organization in our data. The fields include a number of valuable metrics collected and calculated at the season level. Now, I can do all the same kinds of filtering in this dashboard as I can in the other dashboards to narrow down what I want to look at. So you can compare each season within an organization or the same season across different organizations. We could filter to just the organizations that have had Hamilton, but for now, we have just 3 organizations and 12 seasons in the pilot data. So I'm just going to leave it all up there. We can all see it on a single screen. Now let me highlight just a few fields that are on this dashboard. We've got inventory, percent inventory sold, and revenue calculated at the overall season level. We have the number of programmed weeks for Broadway and the number of package and special shows on the season. We have information about package pricing. We have counts of subscribers who are also donors and VIP subscribers. And we have subscription marketing spend, the total spend on subscription marketing in each season by these organizations. I happen to know, getting back to our scenario, that Hamilton is coming to the Blumenthal in 2017 and 2018. And one thing that I think is really interesting is if you look at these counts of subscribers who are also donors, look at the significant increase in that 17-18 season compared to past seasons. Clearly, there seems to be some impact which might be coming from Hamilton. Stephen, what actions might we want to take based on this data?
Perhaps based on this, we want to increase the number of best seats we're reserving for donor subscribers and consider increasing the donation threshold for getting access to those seats. I want to take a moment to point out that on this dashboard, we've collected data from both the ticketing system and in some cases directly from the organization, such as sub-marketing spend. This data can enrich our insights with data points that aren't available in the ticketing systems.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out, Stephen. We think the additional data we're collecting adds some pretty significant value to the Touring engine. All right, so I want to shift gears away from our mythical JCA Performing Arts Center now. My last scenario here is a real one. The Bushnell Center has an upcoming production of Beautiful. It's the second time the show has been there, and they're interested in getting a sense of how the second run of the show might do compared with the first, and how they should respond to the expected differences. So first, let's take a look at that last run of Beautiful at the Bushnell. I'm going to go ahead and navigate back to my sales curve and filter to just Beautiful. And I'm also going to filter to just the Bushnell Center. Change my focus here a little bit. All right, so here I've got a sales curve showing me the last run of Beautiful at the Bushnell Center in January of 2017. We can see that we got pretty close to selling out, a little bit over 90% of our capacity sold, and it looks like a pretty healthy sales cycle. All right, so ideally, we'd have some other venues in our data that have already had Beautiful twice that we could compare to. We don't have any of those in the pilot data, unfortunately, but we can look at other shows that have been through a market twice. I want to show you how we might find some of those production runs. So what I'm going to do is right-click on this sales curve and open the link in a new tab. And on this tab, I'm going to go down and use my nth time through market filter. What this filter is doing is for each local production run, it's identifying whether this is the first or the second or the third time that that title has been through the given market. So I can filter to just local production runs that have been through a market twice. It's the second time they've been through that market. Now, I'm not going to get any results here because I'm still filtered to Beautiful up top. So I'll go ahead and add all of my titles back into the filter. Now, I'm not really interested in the sales curve here. What I really want to look at is the legend. So I can see very easily that I have 4 local production runs that are the second time that title has been through each of the given markets. 3 at the Blumenthal, Book of Mormon, Kinky Boots, and Newsies, and 1 at TPAC, the Book of Mormon. Now, I could explore all of these shows, but right now, let's focus on Blumenthal's 2 runs of Kinky Boots. So I'm going to go back up to my title filter and select Kinky Boots. I'm also going to go to Organization and focus just on the Blumenthal. And down here, I need to clear my nth time through market filter so I can get both the first and second run of Kinky Boots at the Blumenthal. And I think it's going to make me just refresh here to get both of those lines plotted. Perfect. All right. Here we have our 2 runs of Kinky Boots at the Blumenthal. Up here in green, we have the first run in March of 2015, and in orange, the second run in December of 2015. Now that I opened up both of these charts in separate tabs in my browser, I have the ability to click back and forth and compare Bushnell's first run of Beautiful with the first and second runs of Kinky Boots at Blumenthal. So Stephen, are there any insights that can help us understand how we should approach this second run of Beautiful at the Bushnell?
I would look at it this way. The first time the show sold out, the second time it sold about 70% of capacity. For both runs, sales increased in the last few weeks, and last-minute sales are higher the second time through. As we know, the Blumenthal is very heavily subscribed, and it's likely there weren't many single tickets available during that first run. So given that the second run was not on the subscription series, the spike in single tickets at the last minute is steeper and started earlier. So at JCA Pack, so we can feel comfortable that we're going to sell close to 70% of capacity and add that into the forecast. And also, we might want to start our single ticket push a little earlier than we normally do.
That's great, Stephen. So as I said, if we had more time, we might want to also look at each of the first and second runs at other organizations in our data to see what they add to that picture. All right, so this is what we have to show you today. Thank you so much, Stephen, for your insights throughout the demo. I hope you've all gotten a good sense of what's possible with the Touring Engine. To wrap up our webinar today, I'm going to hand things over to Steve Jacobson to share a little more about how all of this works.
Thank you, Kirk, and thank you everyone for joining us today for this webinar. In talking with some IPN members about the Touring Engine, there were a few common questions that they had. We figured that we'd start off this Q&A session by first answering those questions and then opening up the lines for additional questions. So first of all, we were asked, how does this work? As a picture is often worth 1,000 words, I thought it might be best to walk you through this diagram. And don't worry, this is about as technical as it's going to get. You've heard today about our 3 pilot organizations. On the left, you'll see each of them represented. The Blumenthal, which runs Audience View, the Bushnell, which runs ProVenue, and TPAC, which runs Tessitura. As Stephen mentioned early on in this presentation, Touring Engine is system agnostic, meaning we can pull data from just about any ticketing system, including Ticketmaster and Paciolan. The way we do this is through our DEC, which stands for Data Extraction Client. On a regular schedule, typically nightly, the DEC automatically launches and pulls the most recent ticket sales data from each of the systems. The data is then brought up to a centralized warehouse where it is standardized and aggregated. If you look toward the bottom of the screen, you'll see that we can bring additional data into the warehouse as well. Some examples of that could include such things as marketing spend, market size, or even notes about specific productions. And then on the far right, you see the Touring Engine dashboards, which is the user-side software you've been seeing today. How much work is it for me? Well, the good news is not much at all. JCA will work with your IT team to address any minor issues that crop up. But basically, we can install Touring Engine in a matter of a few hours. We'll set up the schedules for pulling the data and train your team on how to enter any supplemental data, like marketing spend. JCA provides all of the support, and of course, we're available for any additional training. Is the data secure? Well, the short answer is yes. The Touring Engine is hosted in the cloud on Amazon Web Services. We employ all of the industry standard methods for safeguarding your data. Among other security measures, your data is encrypted while it's being sent from your database to the Touring Engine. An important thing to note is that access to your data is restricted to only those IPN members who are participating in the Touring Engine. We will not sell, rent, use, or otherwise share your data with anyone else. And if you decide to no longer participate in the Touring Engine, we'll simply delete your data from the system. The data that we store does not include the names or addresses of your ticket buyers, so you're not sending up any personally identifiable information or PII. What's next for Touring Engine? Well, what we've shown you today is a pilot based on data from 3 organizations. Hopefully you've been able to see what the potential could be with greater participation. The more participants, the more data you can leverage, and the more value it will be for IPN members. To that end, what we're hoping to do is to turn this into a production system. We've listed some potential roadmap items here. And we're sure that you all have additional items that you'd like to include as well. And the key thing is, we really want to get your feedback. We would like for you to consider this your official invitation to join the IPN Touring Engine. We're looking at an estimated annual cost of about $15,000 per venue with a one-time implementation fee of $3,000. However, please note that the annual cost is estimated. It could be less, it could be more, and it may vary based on such things as whether data fees are assessed by your ticketing provider. At this time, we'd like to offer the first 5 organizations that sign up the option of participating in our advisory group to supplement the Blumenthal, the Bushnell, and TPAC. We're really excited about the opportunity to work with you to help us build out the functionality in the Touring Engine. In terms of timeline, we're hoping to gain commitments over the next couple of months with the goal of launching late this summer or early in the fall. Of course, the timeline is dependent on a number of factors, including how many new source ticketing systems we may need to include, how much software development we need to do, and how many organizations agree to participate. We think that this is a great partnership opportunity for the IPN and JCA, and we look forward to working together with you. After the rest of the Q&A, we'll give you our contact info so you can get in touch with us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie to manage the rest of the Q&A.
All right, thanks, Steve. So if you have a question for our panel here, you can type it into the question section in your GoToWebinar, and I'll read them off. So we already have a question here. Is it possible to add the public on-sale dates as bullets for single ticket sales into the sales curve so we can see those comparative weeks prior to performance from market to market?
Yeah, that is completely possible. That's one of the things that had already been identified by our pilot organizations and is certainly on the roadmap. So the ability to track a number of different sort of key dates in the sales cycle and see how those impact the sales curves.
Great. Okay, next question. Have you expanded to non-Broadway touring productions like touring orchestras or touring ballet companies?
We haven't yet, although that's a really interesting idea, and we would love to talk with you more about that. So whoever sent that question in, please let us know, and we would love to have a conversation with you about it.
Great. Okay. Another question. Tell us more about the advisory group.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about the advisory group. So I think what we want to do, we've been really grateful for all of the support and assistance that the teams from the TPAC and the Bushnell and the Blumenthal have provided, the insights in how they do business and the kinds of things that they're interested in seeing as we've developed the pilot. I think at this stage, we really feel like it's important to expand the pool of voices and involve more people and more organizations in the conversation as we start contemplating the next stages of development, the additional features, the additional data points that we want to collect, the additional dashboards that we want to add, those types of things. So we anticipate that we will be convening an advisory group. As Steve mentioned, the first 5 organizations that sign up will have the option of participating in that group, and we'd be meeting regularly to generate ideas, evaluate those ideas, and kind of prioritize the things that will be built in this next version of the Touring Engine.
Great, thanks, Kirk. What are your thoughts on critical mass? How many organizations do you feel will make this truly valuable?
We're hoping for at least 10, and if we can get 15, I think that would be a really good start for us.
And I think we're also anticipating that this is going to grow over time. So, 10 to 15 in the first year would be great, and we look forward to continuing to expand. And as I think is completely obvious, the more organizations are participating in Touring Engine, the more valuable Touring Engine is going to be to every participating organization.
Okay. What is included in the Touring Engine license?
I can take that one as well. So the license will include access to the software, the ability to use it. It will include support from JCA. So if issues arise with the data extractions or with the dashboards, we'll provide support. The license includes maintenance. So as ticketing systems change and release upgrades, we'll continue to maintain the extraction functionality to make use of those changes and adapt to those changes. So maintenance, support, hosting, all of that kind of functionality and those services are included in the annual license.
Okay, great. Do we have any other questions from the group? Can you have multiple users within each organization?
Yep, absolutely.
Great. Okay, last call for questions. All right, I think that's all we have.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much, everybody, for those questions.
Thank you.
So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Please send us an email if you're interested in talking more. We'd love to talk more about this, see what you think, and what your takeaways are from this conversation or from this webinar. We do want to express again special thanks to the amazing teams at the Blumenthal and the Bushnell and the TPAC who have helped us get started and build this pilot. They've been great to work with, and we're really glad to have had them as partners. And looking forward to having more of you as partners. So thank you again for joining us. Take care.